Good evening again. Thank you for joining us. My name is Danny Knoll, he, him. I'm the administrative assistant at the CDTC. Welcome to CDC Essentials Part 2. If we're meeting for the first time, the Continental Divide Trail Coalition is a nonprofit. We are dedicated to the completion, protection, and promotion of the Continental Divide National Scenic Trail. We're spread across the 5 Divide states, and we're headquartered in Golden, Colorado. For the purpose of this session, we want to provide information for hikers, share tips for people traveling through the Continental Divide landscape, and help connect the CDT community. Following the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A. As questions maybe pop into your mind, you can enter them into the chat feature, or there's also a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And our panelists, as you can see here, will do their best to answer questions throughout the evening in the order they are received. Hopefully, we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end, and we'll address any additional questions that there may be. And we're going to be providing a lot of information to you in the next hour, so feel free to take notes if you'd like. But just know that if you miss something, that's okay. This is being recorded, and we're going to post this to our YouTube channel probably in a couple of days as soon as it becomes available, along with any links of information that we may cite for tonight. So with that, I'd like to just jump right in, and I want to introduce Haley. She's our field coordinator. She's actually joining us from Europe right now. I believe she said it's 2 a.m. there. So Haley, thank you so much for being here, and please take it away.
Thank you, Danny. And hello, everyone. Yes, so as Danny said, my name is Haley. I use she, her pronouns. I am the field coordinator for the CDTC. And tonight I'm going to start us off with everyone's favorite subject, defecating in the outdoors. So Leave No Trace, or LNT, is actually a lot more than just pooping in the woods. Leave No Trace became a registered nonprofit in 1994, but it is a decades-old concept, and we'll go into it a little bit more. So there are 7 principles to Leave No Trace. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it, but I'm just going to go through them really quickly. So the first one is to plan ahead and prepare. Second is travel and camp on durable surfaces. 3, dispose of waste properly. 4, leave what you find. 5, minimize campfire impacts. 6, respect wildlife. And 7, be considerate of others. So as I said, today we're going to dive a little deeper into just one of these. So that is principle number 3, dispose of waste properly. So all hikers, whether you are a day hiker, a section hiker, or a through hiker, can abide by these principles and just help us all be better stewards of the land that we walk through. So basically, to go into number 3, when you go to dig your cat hole, do it at least 200 feet, which we know you did not bring a measuring tape with you on your ultralight through hike, but that kind of translates to like 70 steps away from campsites, away from the trail, away from water sources. So you want to make sure you're at least that distance from all 3 of those things. That also applies to if you're using soap or anything like that, you want to be at least 200 feet or 70 steps away from water sources to allow it to filter through the ground and not go straight into the water. So to go into a little more about the catch holes, you also are going to want to dig it 6 to 8 inches deep into the ground. And most like commercial trowels that you can buy will be at least 6 inches deep. So like the Deuce of Spades, I know, is super popular. That one is going to be your correct distance to go deep into. They make it super easy for you. So, you know, no worries there. And then along with that, you're going to want to bury toilet paper, and please don't leave it just strewn about. I lead our volunteer projects, and we use rocks a lot, and we're always finding little toilet paper surprises under rocks. So please either bury it in the cat hole with your waste or pack it out. Super easy option as well. You can pick up some dog waste bags and really easily dispose of any sort of waste you have used toilet paper, or you can also go the backcountry bidet method. Lots of great options there. And anyway, moving on, for one more option on pooping in the woods, please don't do it in dry washes. There's a lot of them in New Mexico, the southern region of the Divide. If you are doing your business in a dry wash in a wet year, that is going to become a water source. So please be a good steward for, hikers to come, and never go that route. We know it's hard and a lot of you want to really get those miles in, totally get it, but just try to be conscious of these things moving forward. And yeah, I think that's it for me. And yeah, lots more great information to come. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Haley. Yeah, and I would also plug the backcountry bidet. Game changer for sure. Okay, so I have the privilege to talk to you all about snow. This may be the most discussed pre-hike topic and certainly questions that we field a lot. The reality is the CDT is very difficult to through hike in a continuous direction in a single year. Your window, if you're trying to avoid snow, your window is very, very small. So my intent is not to discourage anyone or fearmonger or tell you how to hike through the snow or when to hike through the snow or what you need, because quite frankly, we are not the experts on snow travel or mountaineering or anything like that. There are some great organizations along the Mountain West and across the United States that can provide mountaineering courses, avalanche courses such as Knowles or the Colorado Mountain Club. And it's not too late to get into a course if you want to give yourself more experience and skills for traveling in the snow. I do intend to point out some hazards, resources, and methods commonly used to avoid snow travel if you're not comfortable and you do feel inexperienced. So let's jump into some hazards. So first is decreased pace. You are likely, if you are traveling through snow, going to be like this hiker here, post-holing. That can be very difficult. We receive calls every year from loved ones saying that their loved one on the trail missed a check-in and they didn't check in on time. Almost always it's because they've entered the snow and they couldn't travel as fast as they anticipated and they were a couple of days late. So if you're planning to hike through snow, do plan for more time. Absolutely. Next is navigation. As you can see in this photo, typically when you're traveling on snow on the CDT, you can't see the trail. So it's very difficult to know where you are. There's certainly resources and GPS that can help you with that, but this will add to your decreased speed because you're going to be spending less time walking and more time navigating. Then we have consequential falls. So typically when the trail is going over a high mountain pass or it's just higher in elevation, the trail is going to be cut and graded nicely along a slope. However, when there's snow, like pictured here, that will cover the trail and you no longer have a nice flat tread to travel on. The danger becomes if, like this hiker that's pictured here, what happens if you fall? Will you start to slide down that slope? And that's why it's really important to have the skills of like self-arresting and maybe certain equipment like an ice axe to be able to stop your fall. So again, really critical, don't walk away from this webinar and the last 5 minutes of me talking about this thinking, okay, I need to bring an ice axe, I'm good to go. If you have no experience doing this, reach out and find more resources, potentially like a course or something like that, to give yourself more confidence and ability to do this. Another concern is avalanches. They can happen, and so that's just something to be aware of. I'm not an expert in avalanches, so I couldn't tell you what to look out for, but you can take a 2 or 3 day course. Again, it's not too late to do that, especially in places like Colorado or even like the Pacific Northwest. You can find courses still before your hike if you're starting as soon as April. to help you identify avalanche dangers. Another great resource is the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. Their website is great. And they, much like fire danger, they have different dangers levels of avalanches. So that's a great resource to check if you plan to travel through Colorado during snowpack season. There's also high water crossings. And this you'll typically see if you travel lower, right? A lot of the water is going to filter down to lower elevations. And these water crossings can sometimes be impassable. And it's really up to you to decide what is passable for you or not. But do keep in mind that sometimes these can be very dangerous and you may have to simply turn around and backtrack. So there's a lot of methods people use to minimize how much snow they have to travel in. Something that's becoming much more popular is flip-flopping. A very common flip-flop we see is from northbounders that start at the southern terminus, and they essentially hike north until they run into snow, which can be in northern New Mexico or Colorado and around the Colorado-New Mexico border. And then after they hit snow that they no longer feel comfortable traveling in, they will flip up to a different section. So get transportation perhaps to Lander, or even last year, the snow melted off so quickly in Glacier that a lot of northbounders flipped up in June and then just continued their hike southbound all the way back to the Colorado border. So that is an option that's becoming a lot more popular. You can also section hike. The nice thing about section hiking and breaking your hike up over the course of several years is you get to pick and choose where and when you want to hike, so you can hike it in ideal conditions. Another popular method is alternate routes. So if you start to encounter snow, and this is just a great thing to do, like have a backup or a bailout plan if you intend to enter snow, but just having a backup. What are some alternate routes that can get me out of here if I'm deeming it too dangerous for me to travel in? So those are also popular. This one is not going to work for everyone. The faster you hike, the easier it is to make that small, narrow window to hike the CDT without encountering snow. So that may not work for everyone. If you can't hike or don't want to hike at a 4-month pace, it's very likely that you will encounter snow. So those first 4 are the ones that we can control as hikers. The other one that a lot of people try to do is time the weather, but that we really have no control over. So this are a couple of graphs, and I don't want to get too in detail here, but these are pulled from Postholer. Postholer is a great website that pulls information from SnowTel weather stations along the Continental Divide. Really important to note, not all of these stations are right on the trail. Some of them are a few miles away, and oftentimes they're lower in elevation. So just because this graph says that there shouldn't be any snow there doesn't mean that is going to be reality when you're on the trail. So the best way to know is really until you encounter it. On the y-axis, you're going to have snow water equivalent. Snow water equivalent, I'm not an expert in this, but essentially it's just measuring the total amount of water that's held in the snowpack, which is a much better way to measure how much snow and water is there, as opposed to simply just how many inches of snow are there, because the density can change in the snowpack. On the x-axis is dates in time, and each one of these lines represents a year on the CDT. So this top graph here is from the San Juan National Forest and the Carson National Forest, which is southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, roughly 250 miles of the trail. Again, this is taking kind of the average of those 250 miles. So in some parts, it may be more accurate than others. Now, I just want to point out a few different lines here. It's kind of hard to see, so I do apologize, and I'll try to talk through it. This yellow line, this is last year. So last year, right around the time when a lot of northbound hikers were starting in April, it was significantly higher than the average. This black line here is the average snowpack. So a lot of hikers were thinking, okay, this is a big snow year, we're probably going to encounter snow. And a lot of them certainly did. But as you follow along, you can see it starts to melt off And right when we get into late June, it melts right at the average. Another year I want to point out is, I believe this blue line here is 2015. So right around in April, when a lot of through hikers are starting their northbound hikes, it looks like a significantly lower year. Great. So you start out your hike, and as you go along, all of a sudden in May, it looks like it snowed again, and it actually went above average and then melted right around the average again. So just because the snowpack looks like something today doesn't, it's so hard to predict what it's actually going to do. There's so many factors that factor into how much snow will melt and how quickly. So let's jump to the northern terminus. This green line is this current year. And this is a graph of the Bob Marshall and Glacier National Park. So roughly the final or first 200 miles of the trail. It looks like a very low snow year. It's the lowest snow year to date. And these graphs are maybe a week old, to date in the last 20 years. But the closest year that we have to this year is this red line, this 2005. Very low snow year again. Look when this melts. Right around the average, right in early July. So we just don't know. It may melt early this year, it may not. We just do not know. Another year to point out is, I believe this purplish line is 2015. When you're starting to plan your southbound hikes around May, it looks like a very high snow year, about twice the average. But then it has a very rapid melt, and it actually melts before the average. So we just do not know. Last year is this yellow line, and it was a historic quick melt off. It melted by June 1st. So last year was a great year to SOBO if you want to avoid snow. So my point with all this is we just don't know, and you need to make the choice. I highly recommend studying these graphs. You can also go to NOAA's website and look at the individual SNOTEL stations to get better information. But it's really up to you. Don't listen to someone else that says, well, northbound is the best way to go, because they probably hiked in a different year with a different snowpack at a different time. So every year is different and every year is unique. It's just important for you to come up with a plan that's going to work for you if you do indeed encounter snow. All right. That covers snow. I'm going to pass it off to Audra.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Audra Labert, Communications Manager at CDTC. I think Danny kind of alluded to what we're going to transition into next, is that even in spite of all your planning, things are still going to happen out there on the trail, including incidents and emergencies. So we're going to go through CDTC's kind of incident and emergency response program protocols. I think the takeaway, the most important thing is that if you are experiencing an emergency, to call 911 and not contact CDTC first. CDTC has no jurisdictional governing authority over the trail. We play an informational role in emergencies and incidents. And so while we partner with agencies and local law enforcement and law authorities on certain incidents and emergencies, if you're in an emergency, they should be your first point of contact. But we really take it seriously to try to provide you with the best information that we can while you're out on the trail. So this is just kind of a bird's eye view of what that process looks like. And I think that to give you an idea of where you can get that information, if you are a Far Out app user, you may have already seen alerts and things come through Far Out. But again, we have that identification of this is non-emergent, emergent. We do have an incident report form, and we encourage you to use that form. Let us know about non-emergency incidents on the trail. If we feel like we should bring in the governing authority of that area, we'll be in contact with them. Information that is deemed needed for the public, then goes out through our channels. So that would include the CDTC alerts map and closures and notices page, where we post those alerts. Again, the Far Out app. We have a couple different avenues on social media. We've been posting in the Reddit CDT group and the Facebook class of groups. And then new this year, if you signed up for our shuttle, you may have already seen this, but are the SMS text alerts. We have Danny to thank for that feature. So we're really excited. Sometimes you're in a place where you might get a text message, but you can't check for other types of alerts. So we're really excited to share that resource. And then the right-hand side of the diagram is just to show you that even after an emergency or an incident occurs and we get that information out, we're in this process of then circling back and updating. So just be aware that these channels are updated almost daily when it's kind of that time of year, and really good source of information across all those channels. And again, I just want to plug our closures and notices page. Our GIS specialist, Zach Bumgarner, has made this awesome interactive map, which shows you where those closures are coming up, things like that. And then feel free to share that information back to us via an incident report or otherwise if you feel like there's information that needs to be spread to other hikers. I know you can also do that in the Far Out app, but if you're not using the Far Out app, you can also share that with us. Okay. Yeah, so CDT is bear country, and really, like Danny said, we don't want to try to scare anyone, but grizzlies do set the CDT apart from other long trails, and it's important to travel through grizzly country responsible. There's a need for greater caution, but it's also a privilege to be in a landscape with these amazing animals, and grizzlies in particular are an indicator of an ecosystem in which other animals can thrive. That said, while black bears inhabit all 5 divide states, grizzlies are only in the northern part. We can travel through bear country safely, but it's really important to appreciate the potential seriousness of bear encounters. So we're going to discuss last year, there was a portion of the CDT closed near Yellowstone. It was not a CDT specific hiker or directly on the CDT, but it was close enough that a portion of the CDT was closed. We had a really good exchange with the local governing authority and got that information out to folks. In some cases, when alternates are readily available, that's really beneficial. Other bear encounters occurred throughout the Northern Continental Divide ecosystem last year, including also near Big Sky. And basically, this quote from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks sums up: there's a lot of people out recreating. We know there are more bears. So the potential for grizzly-human interactions is higher than it has been, and is trending up. But so we can't choose whether or not we're going to surprise encounter a grizzly, but we can definitely take steps to prevent negative interaction and also to protect others. So we're going to cover some best practices. Number one, and I still see questions online about, should I carry bear spray? The answer is 100% yes. Carry bear spray, know how to use it, practice using your bear spray. If you're going to do that, just be aware of where the wind is and that no one is near you. There are plenty of stories of that happening. Be aware of your surroundings. And that includes having your senses available to you, wearing earbuds on the trail. While I know it makes the miles fly, it desensitizes you to the landscape. You could miss really important signs that could prevent a grizzly encounter. Make noise. There are gadgets for this. You can hike with other people and try to be chatty. And then this is really tough, particularly when it's hot. But if you're going to travel in the dawn and dusk hours, just be particularly cautious. Avoid camping along travel corridors. And what we mean by this is game trails. So if you're in a campsite and it looks like there's maybe a soft trail or some matted down vegetation leading to a stream, camp away from what might appear to be a game trail. And then again, read the signs. If you're in a campground that has had overturned logs, big rocks, things like that, just know what you're looking for. Use your senses. Probably one of the most important ones too is to protect your food and store in a bear safe manner. We're going to dive into that a little bit more. But first, carrying bear spray is not enough. We actually have to be able to access it. I threw up here, I think these are a couple of really good examples of how to carry bear spray, and there's one not so good. I don't know if you've even tried to pull a water bottle out of that part of your pack, but it could be really clumsy. So keeping your bear spray there is not a viable option, nor is it like in the brain of your pack or in the cavity. It needs to be accessible. And then often, like if I feel the hairs on the back of my neck go up, or I'm in a really brushy area with lots of berries or something, it's in my hand with my thumb on the lock, particularly if you're by yourself. Next, please. This is just, we don't have to be experts in bear biology, but being able to read the signs, again, might help you with decision-making. Color and size are not reliable indicators of bear species. So being able to identify tracks, things like that, might help you, or at least bring you peace of mind if you see something or see tracks and you really wish you could identify which species it is. So just a nod for, we're not going to go into this, but for maybe doing a little bit of research and learning just more about bears in general. And again, like I mentioned, probably the most important thing is food storage. This is for you, this is for the bears, this is for the people that come after you, that may have to deal with bears that have been habituated to human food. With food storage requirements, know before you go, whether you're doing a hard-sided canister, soft-sided canister, or container, a hang or a combination. Just take that responsibility to know before you go. I put some bullet points below in terms of food storage, but in general, from the Bridger Teton North, there are food storage orders in place, with the exception of Rocky Mountain National Park, which is always a hard-sided container if you're going to be in Rocky Mountain. In addition to storing your food correctly, keeping a clean camp, not leaving food particles on the ground, spills, things like that. And in some places, possessing or attending food is technically allowed, essentially sleeping with your food. Highly not recommended, particularly if you are alone. Bears tend to identify tents and yeah. So you don't want to be locked in your tent with your food and a hungry bear outside. The diagram gives an example of one more back, Danny, thanks. A well-positioned campsite. Use your senses, try to position yourself upwind of your food, your kitchen, separate those areas and store your food properly. I do want to make another note about hanging hard-sided, what you plan to do there. You'll notice the tree in the diagram is like the perfect bear hang tree. And I can guarantee you that when you're looking for that tree, at the end of the day, it will not be there. So with the exception of Yellowstone and Glacier, a lot of folks are choosing to use hard-sided containers to have that peace of mind. Maybe you are in high country, maybe you're in a burn, or just a place with a lot of fir or spruce that just is not conducive to a bear hang. It can be really frustrating to have the resources to do a good job. And so we are seeing a lot more hikers just opting for the hard-sided container the whole way. And lastly, just remembering that while we do have to take extra planning, the wildlife is what helps draw us to these places, these wild places, and what keeps it wild and special. So we want to make sure we keep these animals wild and keep our food away, but also keep you all safe as well. And you're going to hear from me for one more section, fire. So fire can occur anywhere on the trail. And I think these news articles really illustrate that. From New Mexico's Boot Heel, Colorado, fire can occur anywhere, even in sparsely vegetated areas. The risks are things that add to the risk of human-caused fire are campfires, the high winds that occur in the Boot Hill and other places, and even your stoves if you're hiking with a stove. These are all potential ignition sources. The Black Range fire is a fire that occurred very recently, and in May of 2022, this human-caused wildfire started in May, burned over 300,000 acres. So we really don't want to have that weight on our shoulders, and so just be really careful with fire. The other article I put is just some discussion about, like, do we need campfires to have a wilderness experience? So something to think about. And ahead, I'm just driving home that, yeah, human caused ignition is extremely, extremely significant. And we want to be careful with fire or potential. Go ahead, next slide. If you do decide to make a fire, just be aware of the water you're going to use to put it out. It takes a surprising amount of water to make a space cold after there's been a fire. So really keep that in mind, how hard you're going to have to work for the water to put that out. If you're only willing to spare half a liter to put out your campfire, maybe don't make it because it's probably not going to be enough. So the method for making sure that you have it cold and dead out is to drown it, stir it around, stick your hand in there, and if there's warmth, you repeat the process until there's no warmth. It does take a surprising amount of water, so just really be cautious there. And in the event of a wildfire, these or other emergencies may result in closed portions of the CDT. We talked about this earlier. In emergencies, CDTC will post information about closures and routes as soon as it becomes available. This is something we work with the agencies on as well. In the event of a wildfire, some people opt to try to blaze through. Just be aware that walking through closed portions of the trail can result in you being injured. Obviously, they're closing it for a reason, but it also could impede the fire suppression efforts. So if they're trying to do aerial operations and they spot a hiker, they're going to have to shut everything down until they figure out what's going on. So just be aware of the consequences of your actions for going through those potential closures, more than just kind of weighing whether or not your personal safety is at risk. And I will tell you that those situations are likely going to happen. So just be aware that you may have to be flexible at certain times with closures. And I think that's it. We're on to Dan talking about gates.
Thank you, Audra. Hello, everyone. I'm Dan Carter. I'm the Traillands Conservation Program Manager here at CDTC. I'm based down in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I'm pretty close to the southern terminus. And so, yeah, I'm here tonight to talk to you about some gates and some private land and trail issues. And so throughout the Continental Divide Trail, these are public lands that are shared with many different uses. And a lot of these lands are also working lands. People make their living grazing livestock or other ways. And so gates and fences are a pretty critical component of that use, as well as the recreation that we share on the public land. So it's really important for us to learn how to share the resource together and be good neighbors and cooperate. And so gates is a huge part of that. It's one of the biggest issues that we hear about from the grazing community is gates getting left open or fences getting tampered with. And that causes a lot of headache and sometimes livestock being where they're not supposed to be. So more or less, it's pretty simple. Please close the gate behind you. The only exception I would say is if the rancher is standing there and tells you to leave it open, you want to make sure you close that gate behind you. And there's all kinds of different gates, and just so make sure that you're able to close that and keep livestock where they need to be. It's really important because it's also to keep them where they need to be, because that's part of the management plan, but also keeps them out of places where they shouldn't be. It might be sensitive habitat or riparian area or a water source that you want to get your water from, and it's best if livestock aren't in there. So it's really important to keep those gates closed. Something else to note is some fence crossings and gates may not be accessible to equestrians. So if there's some equestrians on here, we're working on improving that, but we will admit at this point there are some fence crossings that don't currently have equestrian accessible gates. So it's just something to be mindful of as you're planning your ride, to check in with us or to local land managers to see where those locations might be if there is a question of if that gate or that fence is going to be passable. Make sure you please do not cut or damage the fences, as frustrating it might be. Like, that really causes a headache for everybody. And also stay on the trail. One, it will get you through to the fence crossings and to the gates where they're planned, where the trail is established. But a lot of these areas, especially down in the Boot Heel of New Mexico, through Wyoming and Idaho, it goes through a lot of a patchwork of land ownership called checkerboarded lands. And so there might be state, there might be private, there might be public lands. And if you stay on the trail, you know that you're on the actual public land or within an easement that we've worked with, or other people have worked with, obtaining that easement either across state lands or private lands to allow for that public access for that continuous trail. So making sure that you stay on the trail and you don't wander off to water sources that are on private lands or off to someone's private land where honestly, a lot of people live out along the Great Divide to have peace and quiet, and they don't always want people showing up at their doorstep. So please stay on the trail. It also reduces the impacts to the lands. And if you see anything, it's like a fence or a gate, or maybe you see something going on with livestock, if you take the shuttle this year, you can ask our shuttle driver about an interesting situation with a cow last year. But if you see anything that raises your alarm, it never hurts to let the ranchers or let the ranch hand know if you run into them. Contact the land manager, or you can always contact CDTC so that we can then let them know and they can address that, whether it's a broken fence or a broken water valve or anything like that, distressed animals. So please report those. And again, this is just really important to the ranchers and other people that are making their living off of the public land as well, and that we share this space with. So again, it's good to be courteous neighbors. I mentioned the private property concerns of just staying on the trail. And exciting news, there are new gates down in the Boot Heel and in the Gila area. So we've been working over the last couple of years with local conservation corps, Bureau of Land Management, the local grazing lessees to put in a lot of gates where in the past there's just been fences, probably a lot of torn backpacks too on some of the really tight barbed wire gates. So we're slowly working through that, but I think all but 2 fence crossings at this point are currently have some sort of gate on them down the boot hill. So yeah, that's all I have, and we will pass it on to the next person.
Awesome. I think that is me. I'm Jordan Williams, pronouns he, him. I'm the Colorado Regional Representative, and I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. So thanks everybody for joining tonight. It sounds like we have a pretty experienced group of hikers on the call, so I'll try to keep this really short and just hit some highlights. I wanted to use this time mostly to focus on our updated planning guide, which has some resupply and planning, just general recommendations. So definitely check out our online updated planning guide. We also have great resources on our website in terms of our Gateway community listings for Trail Town resources, as well as a blog post that's linked here, and then it'll be sent out later. But the big kind of takeaway from most of those resources is that many local businesses already have the equipment needed by trail users in large part, and most towns along the CDT have well-stocked grocery stores. So though there are a few locations where you may want to send a package, in general, the trail communities do have what you need. And so that first thing obviously on people's mind is mailing packages ahead of time, and there may be some places you want to do that, either to a post office or a business. Just please make sure to allow extra time for deliveries. Most of these are rural communities where you'll be going through, and things move a little slower in rural areas of out west, of course. Post offices are great and offer the widest range of services, but we realize they may not always be open when you need them. And businesses will often post on Facebook and other CDT pages if they're up for accepting resupply packages by mail. But one of the big things we stress is please call ahead and ask the business before you mail a package, just to confirm that. And of course, you can mail resupply packages along the way. You don't have to do it all up front. We do oftentimes recommend that, of course, as you're going along the trail and mailing them. But please call ahead to businesses if you don't end up picking up your resupply as well. So after the fact, please let them know that if you can't make it there for any reason for your package, they really appreciate that. In terms of resupplying along the trail, we do have example resupply strategy listed on our website. It's not necessarily a great resupply option for everybody, but it's used as an example for educational purposes, and it has mile markers on there. And it was shown through, feedback that we've gotten from our communities and from hikers. halfwaynear.com runs a survey, and it was shown that there were really only 4 locations along the trail that were highlighted on there where people in general recommended mailing a resupply versus just resupplying in town. And that's a lot of other resupplies in town versus mailing. So kind of keep that in mind when you're planning. Some other additional highlights from those resources: obviously food selection is really important. People with dietary restrictions or medical needs, that's going to be different for everybody, and you have to plan that out and mail in advance. We totally understand that, of course, and so do the communities. And so nothing will work perfectly for everyone, and planning ahead is really great. Mailing boxes from the trail obviously works, but please be considerate of the local businesses when you do that along the trail, since they can't bounce your box or provide the same level of service that a post office is. So just keep that in mind, that they are really providing the service to trail towns as businesses willing to hold resupply, and it's not the same as a post office, and they're really trying to help everybody out. In terms of frequency of stops, 5 to 6 days was often the sweet spot, it seemed, for many CDT travelers when resupplying. In terms of planning that out, obviously there's going to be some longer stretches in there and some shorter stretches or opportunities, but that was kind of the average. And then getting to town and the local amenities there, really, we really want to stress the other thing is consider supporting local businesses in these gateway communities and trail towns whenever possible. There are lots of trail angels and other folks and other ways to get to town, including volunteer shuttles from certain trailheads, and that's delineated on community pages as well as obviously social media pages as well for those areas. And I like this, the general rule of thumb being that if you can buy peanut butter somewhere, it probably isn't worth sending a resupply package to, which is kind of funny, but also kind of true. When my wife and I did the Colorado Trail a few years ago, and we tried to save a bunch of money by buying everything ahead of time and mailing packages and having friends deliver them. But unfortunately, by the end of the trail, we were kind of sick of all the prepackaged and pre-bought food that we had bought, and really wished we had just bought stuff along the way as we got hungry. And so I know some people can kind of eat the same thing over and over again, but that was not our experience on the Colorado Trail. And so it may be a little more expensive, of course, considering buying in town and supporting local businesses, but you probably will save some time and logistics on the other end by doing that. And then the last thing just wanted to hit on was some etiquette. Here we have a photo of some trail shoes there in the bottom left at a post office. And it's pretty obvious when hikers come through town and they're resupplying in these smaller communities. And so we really want to stress, through our hiker hang tag program and the leave no trace principles that we talked about earlier, that extends to communities as well. And we really want to be a good neighbor, when staff and everyone's going through these towns, including hikers and trail users. And so these shoes were left behind, which shouldn't have happened at the post office, and there was a big mess, but it caused the hiking community and the trail community to kind of get blamed for some of those issues that may arise that probably aren't hiker related. But again, we kind of stand out as part of the trail community. So just please be spatially aware of yourself, including smells and all the equipment that hikers carry when you're in town, and where public and private areas are for resupply needs and spreading out. I know we have to get all of our gear ready, in town and spread out and package our foods, but just be really conscious of that. And, as a representative of that community, we really appreciate everyone's support there. I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Jordan. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because we spoke about it in our part 1. Just know that hiker hang tags are available this year. One thing I want to clear up, these are not permits. They are not required. It's a voluntary registration that you do online. When you register online, that makes you eligible to find one along the trail, and the distribution points are posted there on the screen. So yeah, please register your hike. A lot of you have. Thank you so much. It just gives us really good data to know where hikers are and when. And that's just going to help us improve the trail. You can also sign up for those emergency alerts on that same form. So with that, that's all we have tonight. I just want to quickly thank everyone that contributed photos for this. And I especially want to thank Sarah Van Cleve, who is a former thru hiker from last year that put this presentation together. So thank you so much, Sarah. And then I want to pass it over to Claire, who I think has been monitoring our Q&A and chat for questions.
Thanks, Danny. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. I'm our community engagement coordinator. I use she, her pronouns. And if you have more questions as we're doing our Q&A, if you send those in through the Q&A feature, we will note those and keep track of them. So our first question for Danny is there a point that makes the most sense to send snow gear to?
Oh, gosh. It depends. If you are southbound starting in Glacier, you may start in snow. So you may need it there. If you're northbound, it's common for hikers to encounter snow around northern New Mexico when you enter the Carson National Forest. Typically, that's around the Colorado-New Mexico border, but it depends on the time of year you're there. There can be snow on Mount Taylor, which is near Grants, which is significantly further south. There can be snow north of Cuba, New Mexico. So it really does depend I would say generally Chama is the place, but you may need it sooner just depending on the time of year you're there.
Awesome. And Audra, can you specify where an earth sack alone is acceptable versus where an earth sack with the metal insert is required?
I'm going to refer you to the Interagency Grizzly Bear Committee website. It has a list of approved products on there. Ursac is on there, but this specific model I would have to check also. We could try to get that information for you, but the IGBC website is also a great resource.
Awesome. And Dan, we have a couple of gate questions. One individual says, where I'm from, you have to leave fences as you find them, open if found open. Do you close a gate that you found open? And similarly, sometimes I've come to an open gate and wondered if a hiker ahead of me didn't close it. Then what?
Yes, this is a great, you like set me up so well, because this is the conundrum of the gate situation really is yeah, you have a very kind trail user in front of you that opened the gate and is like, oh, you're behind me. I'm going to leave this gate open for you. So, you know, it's a nice gesture. But then they come to it and they think the same thing, and they're maybe the last hiker of the year. And then it's left open for who knows how long. So that's what we really push to close the gate, period. You know, when it's on the trail, very few of them are used for driving cattle or other livestock through that. Some of them might be, but typically they're there for mostly trail use. Some of the larger like vehicle size gates might be used for moving livestock between gates. We really just try to stress close the gate. Even if you want to be kind, there's other ways to be kind to your fellow trail users. And you like again, you never know if that was left open intentionally for working purposes or if it was just a gesture of someone to leave it open for others, or they just weren't able to close the gate for whatever reason. So really encourage you to close the gate that you encounter along the trail, unless you know there happened to be the rancher or someone there who directly told you, you know, like leave that gate open. I'm moving cows at this time. So that would be the only instance where, you know, to prefer to like leave it open is if someone told you to please leave it open that is using it. And I'll also catch the next one because it's about the Boot Hill. The Boot Hill is the southwest corner of New Mexico. So if you look at a map of the state outline of New Mexico, you'll see why it's called the Boot Hill. Next little hill down there in the southwest corner.
Awesome. One attendee is planning to hike Sobo and is driving from New York. What are the long-term parking options at or near the northern terminus?
The northern terminus?
Yes.
That's a great question. I don't know. That's a really great question. I don't think I have a good answer for that. A great question or a great opportunity, or one suggestion we can also look into it and get that information back to you. It's a great question. You might consider calling East Glacier or the Chamber of Commerce in East Glacier. That's probably one of the best places. Otherwise, you'd have to leave it in Canada. I don't know that you want to do that. And I believe the lodge there in East Glacier, I think you can leave vehicles there, but I don't know if it costs or anything like that. I would probably call the lodge in East Glacier or the Chamber of Commerce in East Glacier is probably the two best answers I could give. I know Luna's hostel. You might call Luna also at the Laughing Goose, Laughing something hostel. She probably also knows what to do, and she could probably give you some great advice as well. Looking Glass, thank you. Luna is awesome, and she's probably the best resource out there, I would say, in general for that kind of stuff, because she'll know exactly where the best places are. It's probably the best answer I could give.
Awesome. One hiker says the resupply points are pretty far away if you are hiking about 15 miles a day. Any suggestions? And this is particularly in the Wyoming section.
Yeah, I don't think there's any good suggestions except for, maybe be prepared for longer carries. That's the one thing that's very different from the other trails. Along the CDT, there are definitely longer stretches. And if you run into weather or anything else, those stretches can be longer. So even if you're only doing it's only a 3 to 4 day stretch, I also strongly suggest people bring an extra day or two of food. Yes, it's weight, but it's better than starving when you're in the middle of the Wind River Range. And so I think one of the best things you can do is do some conditioning so you're ready and prepared to carry that much weight. I know the big stretch, for example, it's not as maybe doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, but from Ghost Ranch to Chama can also be a long stretch. It's at least, depending on how fast you hike, 5 to 7 days, 8 days. And if you head northbound, it's mostly all uphill. And so you're burning a lot of calories. And so there just is no resupply. And so you just have to be ready to carry more weight. And so balance that with making sure that weight is also good nutrition. That's the best answer I can give. And then, I don't know if I don't believe there are any kind of like food caching opportunities. So, I wish I could give you a better answer, but that's a reality.
Thanks, Teresa. And Jordan, we have a lot of questions about how long a post office will hold a box and how to address that. Do you want to provide any specific directions on that?
Yeah, I know Danny mentioned it in the Q&A, and there was a couple good answers in the chat as well. But in general, from our planning guide, just what we recommend is that both post offices will hold it for 15 days. It can be 15 to 30 depending on the post office, but we recommend planning for 15 days unless, again, you call ahead and maybe just check on that extension. So always put the name on the box, include hold for CDT hiker and your ETA. And then, again, they'll usually hold it for at least or for 15 days. So that definitely check out our planning guide on that as well.
Awesome. And we have a question in regards to wildfires. Is there a way to predict or plan for air quality? If there is a smoke or a fire in the distance, how do we know if it is a potentially dangerous situation? Or could you recommend a resource to learn more about this? Anyone? I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'll try. I think, that's a really great question. And I know in the last couple of years with fire, the air quality has been absolutely horrendous. And I don't know that there's a good answer except for be prepared if we have large fire events to maybe come off trail because the air quality index will be so poor. I don't suggest hiking when it's smoky. In terms of knowing when it's good or bad, I think that's one thing to really sign up for those alerts. We may not always have we may not have the first bit of information. Someone on trail may be the first person to see something. So that's why we really ask that you, if you see something, say something, let us know so that we can then circle back with the agency immediately and ensure that we're getting as much information as possible as soon as possible. And then, sign up for those alerts. So when we get information, you get them to your phone or even your DeLorme. I think it works on a DeLorme. Danny, you can answer that question. I don't know. I know, Audrey, you have your hand up, so.
Yeah, I was just going to give an example. Last year, we got a few reports of concerned hikers that were hiking into smoke. And often you are hiking into heavy smoke that's drifting from a fire. And so even if a fire is near, but again, I was just going to point that out as an example. It can be really smoky and terrible, but like technically safe to hike through. Whether or not you want to exert yourself in that air quality is a different choice. So yeah, just echoing Teresa, as an example, though, sometimes heavy smoke is settling in from other places. We see that a lot. So just use those resources and know where the fires are. And actually, we have had CDT hikers call in fires. You may be the first person to spot a fire. So don't be afraid. It's going to look different though. It's you're going to see a column You're gonna be able to pinpoint someplace on the ground that you can connect a smoke column to. It's not just gonna be a general haze. So feel free to like pass that information on. You might be the first one seeing it.
Yeah, and then I'll just add to that. I know last year we were in Montana, up near Glacier, when all the fires went in Canada, and there was no fire immediately. It was fine in terms of being in Glacier, but the air quality was so poor. We chose not to actually hike one day because it was just so thick. And it's really, I think it's a personal choice, but you know, the air flows across the Rockies can be pretty dramatic in terms of where smoke can come from. Like here in New Mexico, I'm in Santa Fe. There can be fires in Flagstaff, and we will be socked in with smoke here, and it's nowhere near here, but you can't even go outside. So it just depends. The best thing is if you're worried, reach out, text us, call us, check on Gut Hook or Far Out. And, you know, we'll try to get messages out if there is definitely an emergency.
Awesome. And our final question is, how can I access the recording of this session or the previous session if I wasn't able to attend?
Great question. They will be available on our YouTube channel, Continental Divide Trail Coalition. On our YouTube channel, along with all of the great links will be on there as well. The first one is currently up. It does typically take a day or two to process these videos. So this one should come to you in a couple of days. With that, we are out of time. Thank you, Claire, and thank you to all of our staff for being here and answering the questions. And thank you to you all for your participation. Some really great comments in the chat and questions, and I'd love to pass it over to Teresa to close us out.
Yeah, I mean, just once again, thank you everybody for attending tonight. It's been a great learning experience for us. We love your feedback, and anything continue to strengthen the information that we provide to all of the people that are heading out on the CDT this summer or fall or whenever it is you're hiking. Please don't hesitate to reach out with other questions, and thanks for all that you do to help us keep the trail experience a high quality one. And remember that you are laying the foundation for everybody who comes behind you. And so we really appreciate that consideration when you're out there, and just appreciate that people love this place as much as we do. So have a great hike, and thanks so much, and reach out anytime you need anything. Thanks for joining.